Kia ora and welcome to Cinema in Context, where we discuss all things film and the connections between. My name is Jeremy Downing.
I'm William Chen.
And I'm Sarah Watt.
And each month at Cinema in Context, we discuss two films, one current and one retrospective with some connection. It could be the same director, or the same actor, or a similar theme. This month we are discussing A Quiet Place, which is currently at the cinema, and Signs, which came out in 2002. And the connection is they are both family thriller drama films with some kind of extraterrestrial / spiritual, we're not quite sure, threat upon the family.
Well, hold up. Guys, I just watched the movie that mixed horror with familial drama where a world-weary patriarch is buoyed after a tragedy by the love for his family in the face of an impending alien invasion. The action takes place in and around a farmhouse surrounded by creepy cornfields. A character obsessively collects media on the aliens who are great at remaining unseen and communicate via clicking sounds, while holed up in his makeshift evidence room, and the director himself also plays a key role in the film. But I guess enough about Signs. Oh wait, are we talking about A Quiet Place?
So yeah, as you can see, there is a lot of similarities here. So we're going to have a lot of fun today, I think, discussing, comparing, contrasting these films. Who would like
Excellence level.
Excellence level. Yes, we are teachers. Who would like to start us off?
I think the thing that was most compelling to me is that A Quiet Place feels fresh and original and exciting and is one of the best and most suspenseful films I've seen in quite a while, and that revisiting Signs on the back of A Quiet Place made Signs look like quite a dreadful film. And yet, the minute that I say fresh and original and then go see Signs, and as you have so astutely pointed out, William, there are such enormous similarities between the two films, I think, well, how am I thinking that A Quiet Place is quite so innovative? Because it does seem to bear so many similarities to Signs. But for me, personally, cards on table, boy, Signs was awful.
I think they're both a part of a history of these types of films, and they are both harking back very strongly to a lot of thriller, a lot of horror films. Hitchcock is all over both of these movies. The master of suspense, particularly Signs, there's a lot of Hitchcock references. But yeah, I would agree with you about A Quiet Place. It's one of the best films, if not the best film I've seen so far this year. A very competent, confident piece of work by John Krasinski, who directed the piece and also starred in it.
And co-wrote it. And admittedly, he is one of 4 writers, but he is one of the key screenplayers in it, which I think is additionally laudable for him. Absolutely, yeah.
Emily Blunt was my highlight in A Quiet Place. I thought everything she does is amazing anyway, but she just really so dynamic to watch on the screen. I had such a great time watching her performance. And the whole cast, there's sort of 4 key actors in the film, and they do a fantastic job.
I want to go back to what you were saying, Sarah, about how watching Signs after The Quiet Place just makes it seem very staid. And I absolutely agree with that. It's funny because I remember when Signs came out, and this is when M. Night Shyamalan was the Wunderkind.
Yes.
He was the next Spielberg. He had such fresh and exciting takes on genre pieces. And then the first thing that pops into Signs is this really bombastic, old-school Hollywood score.
Yeah.
And this is the stuff that... it's pretty good music, but it underlines every single emotional beat. It tells the audience what you need to think, where the frights are, where the emotional bits are, and that sentimentality, and also that really, we're gonna hold your hand through a very traditional movie, and that shines throughout the entire piece. The acting, a lot of how the mise en scène is taking place. All that stuff just feels very, very classical. But I guess, what are we, like 15, 16 years removed?
Yeah.
It does feel dated.
It's awfully dated. It's interesting. Jeremy's, you mentioned Hitchcock straight off. And the James Newton Howard score of Signs, right from the beginning, felt very, very Vertigo, very The Birds and everything. And I was really thinking, God, he is not exactly making an homage, but this is clearly Hitchcockian. And then of course you do have the ticking bomb kind of aspect in it. And you're right, it's so on the nose. I mean, there's a shot of Mel Gibson, Joaquin Phoenix, and then I think Abigail Breslin sitting on the couch. And the shot is then suddenly through the window looking at them. And the three of them say, we're going to have to board up the windows. And then they look through the window and it's like, we get it. You know, you don't have to spell this out to us.
I think that I agree with you. Going back and watching this film, I was like, oh my gosh, I kind of had to sit through it and labour through it. But when I saw that at the cinema, I would have been 15, 16 years old. I remember really enjoying it. I remember being dissatisfied with the ending. It sort of builds up.
So did I remember being
builds
dissatisfied.
up. It builds and builds and builds, and then never really pays off. It
Yeah.
kind of has this strange encounter in the lounge. But that film was really interesting when it came out. I think back to that era, and we'd just come out of the 90s where we'd had, we'd had the grungy 90 films, the hyper-realism, your Tarantino's, your... a lot of films, Luc Besson, a lot of these movies that are very grungy and gritty and dirty.
And sort of real-life, crimey sort of films.
Yeah.
Or at least trying to be realistic, more so than Aliens and Supernatural, right?
That's right,
That's
more
it.
so than all of the superheroes we get now. And then you had your kind of Matrixes and sort of the fantasy films were sort of starting to come back with the prequel Star Wars films and Lord of the Rings,
yeah,
all that kind of content. So I think Signs came around at a time where we were perhaps craving the classical and craving something that was a little bit more reserved than what was happening, and a bit more. It wasn't too gritty and grungy, and it was everything's quite clean in Signs. Everything's quite pretty, and
It's also a desperately quiet film, and I kind of chuckled my whole way through watching it, derision aside, because I knew that we were comparing it to A Quiet Place, which of course, and we'll get onto this, is notable for how incredibly quiet it is. But it was so interesting that in Signs they don't have the conceit of we've got to be quiet, and yet everybody speaks in a quiet voice like this the whole way through the film. And Mel Gibson had obviously been told, you need to tone it all down, we want it really nuanced, and so he sort of almost goes into monotone and kind of almost this passivity. He hardly acts at all for somebody who is grieving the loss of his wife and who has renounced God. There's none of that. The Exorcist this ain't. There is no drama in this at all. And I was like, how did we get away with that in 2002?
So is that a 2002 thing, or was that a Shyamalan thing? Because I know we've all talked on this podcast about our love/hate for The Happening.
I'm so glad you brought up The Happening.
Already?
The Happening is so bad and so great.
I still have not seen it, and I'm keen to now to compare it to Signs, given that The Sixth Sense was so stunning.
I would suggest you get drunk.
Oh, right.
And you just have a ball.
Yeah.
Because it is so stupid. It's like, it made me realise how stupid Signs is, and now seeing where Shyamalan's career's gone.
Yeah.
And back then, I guess the mystery was so intriguing, and we're like, oh, something's happening here. It's kind of like Donnie Darko. Donnie Darko's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then Southland Tales comes along, and you're like, what? And then the Box, Richard Kelly's film, The Box. It's like, oh my gosh, this guy just doesn't even know what the hell he's doing. And then he hasn't made a film since. But it's the same sort of thing with Shyamalan. Is he just got more and more wacky, and The Happening is kind of
peak wacky.
Peak wacky. Well, before he goes into the last Airbender and the After Earth zone, which is just completely nuts. But oh my gosh, The Happening, and the dialogue is so stupid, and some of the dialogue in Signs is so dumb.
Oh, and it's so expositional.
Oh, it's terrible.
And
it's very stagey in a way.
Yes.
Just does not feel natural coming out of the mouths of human beings.
Or even children to an extra extent. Like there's a part where he goes, where the kid, the boy, Rory Culkin's character, talks to Abigail Breslin, who she's just gorgeous.
Adorable.
She's actually the best thing in the whole film, I reckon.
Oh, Joaquin Phoenix is awesome.
Yeah, he does a good job.
We'll talk about that.
But he says to her, listen, this is going to change all of the history books. And I'm like, what kid speaks like this? And then, of course, there's a big setup to the TV presenter then going, this will change the history books.
But even all of the TV presenters sounded absolutely fake.
Yeah.
Everyone speaks like this and gets exposition across very, very slowly.
It's weird, actually. You've touched on something that I found disconcerting in Signs. I almost wish they'd played it straight the whole time, but occasionally funny-ish sort of things would happen, including that whole, it's going to change the history books, and then cut to the TV presenter saying exactly that so that we can chuckle. And I thought, it's kind of detracting from what I would have hoped would feel a little more grave, a bit more serious. I just wanted to mention, of course, that The Sixth Sense, which of course was M. Night Shyamalan's breakout film was only 99, followed it straight up with Unbreakable in 2000, and then Signs 2002. So it may not be the difficult second album, but it seems like it probably was the difficult third album, Signs, you know.
I remember really enjoying the Village as well, and I'm sort of loath to go back and watch that, because I think of the stupidity of his work, if it's slowly escalating as the years go on.
And that it might not stand up.
Yeah.
But, I mean, speaking of exposition, it's definitely something that A Quiet Place isn't...
Guilty of?
Well, it is guilty.
No, I think it's guilty
I see.
of it.
It
Right.
is absolutely
Yeah.
guilty of it.
Yeah.
I think, just per our conversation before recording, I probably like the Quiet Place the least out of us three.
Oh.
Like, I thought it was really good, but there were some things, and this just might be a neurotic personal thing, but there's some things in that movie which bug me to no end. Specifically, I'm thinking of a piece of visual exposition.
Yes, right at the start.
That is at the start and
Yes,
at the end, which
yes.
is so dumb.
I thought
and
that as well.
treats the audience like complete morons.
Yes.
And then the movie has the gore to go back to it, and
Yeah.
you're like, "Oi, what are you doing?"
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, I love the film, and I've given it 5 stars, but that is definitely something that I thought, oh, that's so on the nose.
Do you think that that's Krasinski's being I mean, this is his debut, right? And
I think he's
just
made a film before.
He's made 2 movies, I think.
Oh, I didn't realise. I thought this was his directorial debut. Okay. And so maybe I've been giving him more credit than is due. But I just wondered, I mean, because I think it's an incredibly assured film, and so maybe that's just one thing that you think, oh, maybe you could have cut that out. But I mean, we were talking about the fact that the denouement in Signs, and we can spoiler it because we're assuming listeners have already gone and seen this film, when Rory Culkin is being held by the alien in the lounge, it's so slow. It is so poorly edited. And then there's the really obvious flashback to the wife who says this, and then we have to watch Mel Gibson's face realize it, and then he has to say it to Joaquin. You know, cut to Joaquin, who's like, what? Cut back to Mel, who's like, you know, cut back to the bat on the wall. And we're all like, we've all done the work already as viewers, you know. And so it completely lacks tension. And I think that one of the biggest problems with Signs, for me, is it totally lacks tension. There's that ridiculous, the TV news where the presenter is saying, this footage has just come in from a child's party in Mexico. What you see may be disturbing. And then we see ostensibly somebody in a onesie, leotard, you know, creeping past a bush, and we're supposed to find that frightening.
I did find it terrifying
in 2002.
And that scene's been voted one of the top 100 scariest moments in movies by Bravo. I think it's number 70 something.
Yeah, but I was terrified by that. I think the lack of the anticipation and the shaky camera, and it really pulled me in. And just seeing something walk past, I don't know why, but it really terrified me.
So maybe then it's of its time, and that I've been jaded by 16 years worth of superior frights, such that I was like, oh, it's obviously just a guy in a dirty purple leotard.
I think also if you're not connected with the film and you're not getting drawn in by that, then it's not going to have the effect that it is intended to.
Sure.
But I will commend Signs for barely showing the aliens.
Yes.
You barely see. I think they're in the film for about 1 minute.
That's probably because they're lame aliens.
No, but he purposefully, because they were going to be in it much more, and he saw the effects and he thought, no, let's just.
Oh, so that's why at the end most of the alien is seen by reflections. And
and in some darkness, it's got light coming in from both angles, so you can't really see it.
It just feels really low budget. It just feels, and not B grade, it doesn't feel B grade in a good way. It just kind of feels a bit like, oh yeah, we couldn't really afford to do that very well. So, and I just think if you're going to do that, you have to edit better. You can make frights out of very little, and as we know from Alien, Aliens and so on movies, you know, you can get through an hour of the film without showing the beast, and we're there and we're petrified,
or Jaws.
and we're with it.
That's the
Right,
whole point.
exactly. That's the whole thing. So I just feel like there are better ways of doing it.
Yeah, it seems to be there is a Shyamalan. He does lack a lot, doesn't he?
Yes.
Even as an actor.
I think his biggest problem with the film is that he directed it, and I feel as though he spent most of his time actually in wardrobe choosing which plaid shirt to wear. And that they're all like, did we get that? M. Night. And he's like, I'll go with the red and blue check. You know, I honestly think that's one of the biggest problems with Signs.
My word.
I'm not on the ball.
Well, on that note, with A Quiet Place, John Krasinski does multitask.
Eye on the ball. That's it. No plaid shirts to be seen.
And he does a really great acting job as well. Like his performance is very understated, and I mean the fact that these actors are acting without speaking is so commendable.
So commendable.
And I talk about it in the review that I did of this film, but it reminded me of, and wait for it, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh no, you never talk about Buffy, Jeremy.
So
I
bringing
can't
Buffy.
believe.
And there's a whole episode which actually got nominated for an Emmy, the one episode that got nominated for an Emmy, called Hush, in which all of the characters lose the ability to speak, and they are plagued by creatures that are destroyed by a scream. And so someone has to find their voice at some point in the episode. But they talked about when they were making that episode that when they had all the blocking written down in the script, the actors just did everything at once. It was just visual chaos, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, this is much harder than we thought." They thought it was going to be a breeze, and it was the hardest episode they had to do. And I wonder if they had similar issues with this film, with the way that they choreographed the action. Like it would have to be quite a different way of working.
But it worked, didn't it?
Well, it did, but I'd be interested to see how much work was behind making it work.
I really do feel it's admirable to make a film that has less dialogue, because there is so much reliance on ridiculous exposition as Signs and other films do far more egregiously. I also thought I thought going into A Quiet Place there wasn't even going to be any soundtrack for a lot of it as well, and then when there was little bits of soundtrack, it made absolute sense. I didn't feel it was bombastic or holding my hand through the emotions or anything. I thought it was well pitched, pun intended. But again, I just think the more that you can convey through acting, mime effectively, isn't it? Acting without speaking, and still have your audience utterly gripped, I think is just brilliant.
There's a scene where the daughter.
Are we talking about A Quiet Place?
A Quiet Place, yes, is having an argument with the dad, and just it gets across the frustration of having to emotionally express herself without sound so wonderfully.
Yeah.
Because they're both trying to basically scream at each other, but they have to do so through sign language.
Brilliant.
And just the actions of their hands and their scrunched up expressions. Wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there is quite a lot of dialogue in the film, isn't there, really? Because it's all signed.
Yeah. And there are tiny bits of when they are in a place where they can speak. But they keep it to a minimum.
I think there's more to talk about that, but I can't without spoiling.
Yeah.
There are definitely moments in the film where the thing is, because they're so specific about the rules, there are times where I was questioning, hang on, how are they doing this, or have they thought about this?
Yes.
And I didn't always have answers to those questions. However, the stakes were so flippin' high in that film, and they successfully set that up very early on, that I don't know, I kind of trusted the film to not try and have its cake and eat it too. And again, I'm trying to talk about something without talking about something. But I was very impressed that the film was able to have high stakes. I really cared about every one of those characters.
Yes.
I really didn't want any of them to get hurt or die. And I thought, man, that is because they've done their groundwork. They spend 40 minutes focusing on this family before...
Who are already in peril. So it's like we don't even have the whole getting to know you thing, and then the aliens land and then you've got a problem. It's like we're right in there.
Yeah.
We're already in the peril. You have to keep silent at all times. We get it. And then, as you say, there's 40 minutes of watching this and feeling this growing tension of, well, be careful where you walk.
Yeah.
And I see what you've done there with the sand on the pathway to cover up the sound of walking, which I think is in the trailer, so that's not a spoiler. And I love the world building of, well, how would you manage this? And what are the things you could do or couldn't do? And then, of course, there are these wonderful, I guess, Hitchcockian aspects to the film where you think, well, how are they going to deal with that when the time comes? And there are at least 3 or 4 that we can't spoiler where you think, well, goodness, have they thought ahead? Did they think that through? And then, of course, we get the rewards from all of those moments having to be dealt with in a really perilous and quite sort of desperate way.
And that's something this film does far, far more successfully than Science, is that it pays it off. It pays off all of its tension.
Yes.
And it has the third act is just fantastic. It's so crazy. And not crazy in ridiculous sense, but in terms of just the tension. Like, I had my hand in my mouth and I had my hand on my head, and I was fully engaged with this film, and I had no idea where it was going to take me and where it eventually went. was so satisfying.
Yes. So satisfying.
Just every beat.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then also very elegantly done to get there. What you were talking about with the Hitchcock. I mean, absolutely. Just like Signs, there is such a strong Hitchcock influence here. There's a ticking clock. There's a literal ticking thing. But there's also other things where something appears and you're like, oh, I wonder how this is going to play in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just not randomly going back to Signs, but talking about Signs and talking about a random aspect of that film, which just is ridiculous, and it's an M. Night Shyamalan, seems to be a staple, is random extras having moments of dialogue, like the guy in the bookstore that's screaming at the TV for being soda commercials.
Yeah.
And then his wife, and again, this is ridiculous dialogue, she's like, oh yeah, I think we've got a book on aliens. I think it's somewhere. It's the third shelf, fourth book from the left.
Exactly.
Honey.
We
I'm
keep
like,
it for the out of towners. She says.
She's like, I think we've got it. It specifically knows exactly where it is.
Know.
She is a very good proprietor.
But
she acts like she didn't even know. And the soda commercial thing it's a gag. It's simply so. I've seen 12 already, and then they cut to the TV, and he's like, and here's another one.
Or what about the chemist girl confessing to the priest, and then the guy? It's a great gag with the guy. You're sort of peering from behind Mel Gibson, you realise it's a queue of people behind him.
Yeah.
But it's so ludicrous.
But there are a couple of those sight gags where somebody moves and you realise that there are people directly behind. Yeah. Like it's when Joaquin Phoenix goes to the Army recruitment office.
That's weird.
Why? And then there's this weird Army recruiter guy behind the desk who says some kind of nothingness. Yeah. And then there's some dropkick who slags off Joaquin. I don't even think that anything that the dropkick says...
It's relevant.
I mean, he talks about his baseball career. Yeah. So if I'd been paying attention, I might have gone, oh, I wonder if that's going to come in useful later on. But it doesn't matter because they set Joaquin's character up, what's his name? Merrill, as being a great baseballer and then a failed baseballer. It doesn't matter.
But then also, the ending, the big twist, the big revelation that the wife's final dying words was to swing away. What a stupid thing to say. Hit the thing with a bat. That's what she's telling him.
Yeah, but isn't the idea that she has foreseen the whole thing?
Yeah, but I mean, for all the things to foresee, what a useless piece of information. Oh my gosh, we can hit it with a bat. It's just so dumb.
But he wasn't going to do so without that, right?
Well, I mean, surely it would be throw some water in his face. That would be helpful. Get some buckets of water ready.
And they took all day to board up all of the windows.
Yeah.
And then they go downstairs, and then there's like a knocking on the door or whatever, and there's the shot of the front door, and it's got one plank.
I know.
It's like, what have you all been doing all day?
What I thought as well.
I know.
And then they're down there for a bit, and they're like, I think it's safe to go outside now. It's the same in The Happening, and spoiler alert, for no reason The Happening stops. Yeah. For no reason. And it's the same with this. Why do the aliens go? Because some people threw some water at them.
Yeah.
It's really dumb. So The Happening is all of that stupidity, but escalated to the point where you're like, how is this movie even made?
And that is not a good payoff. Yeah, and that is the equivalent in English teachery terms of and they woke up and it was all a dream.
Well, do you know what the danger is in The Happening?
Are you going to say?
Yeah, can I tell you?
I haven't even watched the film before.
Trust me, it's so dumb. It's the wind. So they're literally running away from the wind. That's the film that you're going to be watching.
I'm not going to now.
It's so good, Sarah.
Even though Mark Wahlberg's in it.
It's so bad. He's like, what is his line? He's like, this is science, guys. You gotta listen to science. He might look good now at 17, but you wait till he's 40 and he's my age. He's gonna look all old and gross. I'm like, you're freaking Marky Mark. You've looked great your whole life.
Yeah.
This is just
The Happening is the one where people just inexplicably kill
themselves.
Just lie down dead or whatever.
No, they kill themselves in horrible, horrible ways.
And you see, that deserves a much better
But there's no threat. There's no
thing.
threat to that, because if you get hit with The Happening, you just quietly go away and kill yourself. You don't become a threat to people around you, unless you're driving a car or something.
Oh, no, but the threat must be implicit that, what if I am struck by this wind or whatever it is that makes me want to do that? You know what I mean? But no, I think that's dreadful.
There's literally a scene where he talks, there's some dialogue about if you talk to plants, then it's all good. And he's talking to a plastic plant, and he goes, and I'm talking to a plastic plant, and I'm still talking, and I'm going to leave now. And you're sitting in the cinema going, what am I watching?
And that's the stupid gag bit, where M. Night doesn't know what not to do.
But isn't that why we love M. Night Shyamalan?
No.
We love The Sixth Sense.
I love The Sixth Sense.
And I was very happy with Split until things got
Unbreakable's
stupid.
good as well.
And then things got crazy good in the final second.
You say crazy good. I say just crazy with a K.
Where two women are talking at the TV and slight spoilers for what's called Split, where two women look at the TV and go, "Oh yeah, that reminds me. What was that guy's name again?" In a movie.
Well, not quite in a movie. Because he's in it, sitting at the bar.
Oh my gosh.
So, I just...
Have you seen Lady in the Water?
Yes.
And the film critic is more
Bob
by
Balaban.
creatures.
Oh, yeah.
So...
And M. Night Cast himself is like a seer of humanity. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. But I mean, that being said, I genuinely did enjoy, for some weird reason, like the scene where they're at the pharmacist, or not the army recruiter scene. That was weird.
Just weirdness. I didn't mind that scene at all.
But I actually found a lot of pleasure in the little stuff in Signs. Maybe not from the writer-director point of view, but from what the actors did. Like Mel Gibson, how he would react to some scenes was very naturalistic and felt.
It was nice to see Mel
true
Gibson
to life
in a film and not be like, ugh, because even though I'm like,
Yeah.
ugh, it's like, well, back then he wasn't. I suppose he was, because it was all.
I think he and Rory Culkin had a really good rapport. I think there was some beautiful... some beautiful moments of them on the couch,
Yeah.
Abigail Breslin usually on the other side as well, mainly or on the bed or whatever, mainly Rory Culkin, who I just thought is amazingly like preternaturally talented, where he's like, Dad, don't use that tone, and he's like, I didn't use a tone. He's like, I heard you use a tone, kind of, there's just this wonderful straight-faced maturity
All four actors were really strong, I thought.
Yeah.
And then you think of those kid actors, and the kid actors in A Quiet Place were phenomenal as well.
Oh,
yes.
Abigail Breslin, she's gone on to have,
Abigail
she's worked
Breslin
the
after
most
that
now.
did Little Miss Sunshine,
Yeah.
and I didn't remember her as being the tiny wee girl in Signs,
I don't know.
and she's extraordinary.
Yeah.
For a little person, she's desperately talented.
like the dinner scene where
Yeah.
it's not much, but everyone behaves in such natural ways, and you can feel
Oh,
like
yes.
this family. It's dysfunctional. They all love each other.
But I did not think Mel Gibson was good in that. I thought
really?
he was completely scenery chewing, where he's like, I'm going to eat everybody's dinner, and
And
you're
he
going to
starts-
enjoy
I reckon
it.
it's a weird scene to play.
I mean, I
reckon
get
it's-
it.
I think it's more
and
of a
then he
scene.
starts chewing away.
Yeah, I'm going to eat some of this, and then he starts crying, and it's like,
But I
just...
thought a dad, though, would never do that. And I'm going to eat everyone's. I'm like, really?
I think that was the least of the problems.
Right,
I just
okay.
thought it was really badly, dumbly done. And again, for me, that was like the on the nose. It was as on the nose as opening scene. Mel Gibson wakes up, looks at photograph of himself with family, and he's wearing a dog collar because, of course, you'd wear your work uniform in a family photo. But then, as he leaves the bedroom, there's kind of a place on the wall where a crucifix has been removed.
Yeah.
Gee, I wonder what his faith is like right now. How many times are they going to call him father for him to go, you don't have to call me father, stop calling me father.
Yeah.
There's also scenes where he's looking directly at the screen. Someone behind him says father, and he says to the screen, "Don't call me father."
I love it. Do you know what I thought when the scene where he's getting told by the policewoman, who I thought she was
Sherry Jones.
She's great in this film. She's got this silly character, but she does a great job. But that scene where she's going, she's explaining to him that his wife's pinned to the tree. And he's like, "What do you mean?" And she says, she's not going to make it. He's like, "I don't understand." And it reminds me of, I think it's in Scary Movie 3 or 4, one of the Scary Movies, and they've lampooned that scene, and pretty much he goes, "I don't get it." He's like, "Well, she's broken in half. What do you mean?
Yeah.
She's not going to survive. So what are you saying?" And like they just play the scene out to
It's
as
horrible.
far as they can.
And then she says, "Do you understand what I'm telling you, father?" And he says, this is the last time I'm going to talk to my wife." And she's like, "That's right." And it's just like, this is horrific. And once again, I feel tonally the film is all over
What about the scene where
show.
Joaquin Phoenix and him go, "All right, so let's go outside. You run that way. I'll run that way. We'll make as much noise as we can."
Oh, no,
and then we'll go
Joaquin
around."
says, "Act like you're crazy."
Yeah.
And he's like, "What do you mean?" And he's like,
curse?
cursing and stuff. He's like, "I can't be cursing." Yeah.
"It doesn't matter because you don't mean it." I'm like, what? Why does it ever matter with cursing?
Okay, guys, I like that stuff. It was just so weird and goofy.
Oh, I liked it when I first saw it, but now where I know where that's coming from and where it goes, how much we can get of it.
I mean, even again, going back to the little things, like the scene where they're watching the footage of the birthday party, how Joaquin is so anxious. He's like, "Vámonos, children,
Yeah,
vámonos!"
but again, it's hilarious, but it's
But it's
too much
supposed to be
humor.
funny, right?
Yeah.
It's
Also,
weird.
my favorite scene in the whole of Signs, and this I only got this viewing, at the very, very end, where the aliens are busting into not the attic, the basement.
Yeah.
And there's this alien arm that comes out and grabs Roy Culkin, and they kind of build this barricade out of all these really heavy things, and there's just one more can, and it's such a weird little character moment. He just, feels the compulsion to finish the job
and put the tin can on top of the pile of mattresses.
It was beautiful.
I did like the Blair Witch moment in that as well.
I thought Blair Witch. I said, what is this Blair Witch?
Yeah, where the camera just kind of is on the ground and focusing on Abigail Breslin's feet or something.
But you see, that's what made me think there's no budget for this film, because they're like, okay, so we need to create a moment where this happens, but we don't have any budget for it, so let's just pretend that we're cutting away,
Oh, I didn't mind. Talking about Abigail Breslin a bit more, that scene at the end where Rory Culkin is, he's had the EpiPen and Mel Gibson's crying, and the camera's kind of flipping between them all.
All that happens.
But she's wonderful in it. She's hitting her beats, and she's a little girl.
Yep.
And she's crying at the right moment, and I'm like, this is phenomenal. This is hard for anyone to do, let alone a little kid. And she just is. I was so impressed with her work.
She's terrific, and the camera work is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Or that gorgeous little scene where she pours it's contaminated. She pours the water into the dog thing, and she pushes it across, and the dog barks and stuff.
See, the thing with signs, right? The water thing, the glasses of water, which is made a relatively big deal of, that's a great payoff to realise that actually that's why, and that everything that's been happening in this family's life has been leading up to this moment serendipitously. And again, it's just such a shame that in the execution of the alien with the water, it's ridiculous. And then you have the alien's
POV.
eye view of the water tipping over the dresser and coming down onto... I mean, honestly, pick a camera shot.
Yeah.
Or pick a style, guy,
But it could only have happened if you had the water plus the baseball bat, and that's why the wife's dying words all make sense.
Oh, it's so stupid. All right, let's talk about Quiet Place, because I'm
such a clever movie. Quiet Place.
Signs is, honestly, I was so disappointed how much I was disappointed with Signs. I loved it when I was younger, and going back and watching it. But yeah.
So Quiet Place. Interesting, as you said earlier, William. Interesting. House pretty much in the middle of nowhere, or at least isolated. Interesting with the cornfields. Thankfully, no crop circles, but still, all the scenes of people running madly and making an awful lot of noise.
Using flashlights.
Right, using flashlights and causing an awful lot of brouhaha and attention. Right, so lots of similarities there.
And some great landmarks. There are landmarks throughout the world. Like you're talking about world building. It matters. It matters where they are, and it matters. They set up their locations well.
Yes.
So that you've got them for the final
bridge,
third.
the water tower, the silo
thing.
Yeah.
The room with the cameras. All those different places.
The steps going into the basement. I mean, just the whole... so simple and so effective.
Talking about loading a gun, in terms of, not literally, but just the way they set up.
Or lighting a fuse.
The audience I was with were just like...
I was sitting there going,
when
is this going to come back into it?
Absolutely right.
And it comes back into it.
And that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
My gosh.
It's interesting that the aliens in A Quiet Place felt, to me at least, reminiscent of the Alien that we know and love from the
Alien films.
Absolutely. And I didn't mind at all that they seemed to be related. It didn't feel like a cop-out. It didn't feel lazy or anything. It actually, if anything, felt not exactly reassuring, because, you never really want to come up against them at all. But it felt credible, because it felt like, yes, we've seen this monster before, and we know that this is really genuinely perilous, as opposed to the person in the mauve leotard. So less peril.
I really loved as well the metaphor of this family trauma, an unspoken trauma. They don't. None of them want to talk about the pain of their past as a family. The film sort of picks up a year on from
and so they are struck mute anyway.
Yeah, so it's told through the metaphor of not being able to speak, and I think that as a metaphor, I really like the metaphor of Mel Gibson's character losing his faith, even if it is on the nose and so heavily handed. But
I'm not gonna waste another minute of my life on prayer.
It's quite an interesting idea. The execution's terrible. But the same thing with A Quiet Place. The metaphor of this family, they're all trying to deal with this pain Nobody's talking about it, and they are actually talking about a lot of things through sign language. But I love that duality with what's going on and what's happening under the surface.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the best. That is the best kind of horror, science fiction, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
When it's the fantastical used to tell something about humanity and about aspects of humanity.
Interesting as well, and I know this isn't a spoiler because it's in the trailer, that one of the children in A Quiet Place is hearing impaired. And you might think, oh, that's a bit of an on-the-nose writing choice, given that the whole film is about being silent. But there's also something beautiful about the fact that everything becomes silent for all of the family, and not just for her. Do you know what I mean?
She's hearing impaired in real life as well.
I didn't.
Yeah, so the actor is too. Yeah.
And then what they do with her character is awesome. Just in regards to the sound design, like every time we get into her head, and the sound completely cuts off, and it's such a striking way to express things.
Well, it doesn't cut off though. There's the silence in this film is so designed. You know, it becomes much more of a rushing kind of silence. It's amazing how much sound design there is in this silence.
Yeah.
Because you're right, it does change, but I was marveling at the fact that it's not just quiet. It's never actually just quiet.
No.
There's always some kind of grey noise or something happening.
But it is a lovely effect to put us into her shoes and to increase the peril because she can't hear the monsters
every time
coming.
that happens, you're like, oh man, something's happening.
Yeah. That's right.
Turn around.
Absolutely.
It's behind you. You know,
and yet it's absolutely better that she can't hear it or turn around, perhaps, because, I mean, who knows, right? So cleverly done. I thought Krasinski, like you said, Jeremy, I think he acted brilliantly, and I do think his direction was spot on. And you've probably heard or read that he initially, when he was going to direct the film, I believe he offered it to Emily, or she at least said, no, I don't want to be in it. Hey, you should ask my friend so-and-so. And he went and offered it to this other actress. And then Emily was like, oh, actually, no, I do want to do it. And he had to go to the friend and say, look, I'm awfully sorry. I've actually given the role to someone else. And she was like, was it Emily? And he was like, yes. And she's like, that's fine.
They did a really good job together. You know,
Really nice.
There's that scene in the film where, and again, this is not really a spoiler, but he's working in the workshop and she comes in and she's got headphones on and they kind of have a lovely little intimate moment dancing in the basement. And I thought, oh, is this going to turn into a sex scene? And I always find that when real couples are in films and they have a sex scene, I'm always like ick. I'm like, too much information.
You mean like Tom and Nicole?
Yeah, or Brad and Angelina. And I never saw that film, but I'm like, I don't really want to see that. It's like, and then it becomes it's not really make believe anymore, and I'm like, this is just too much. But I thought they did a really wonderful job at building that intimacy as characters, even though in real life they're husband and wife.
Yeah, without having to become sexual, because it would be totally redundant.
And it was a lovely scene, a really lovely moment. And good use of, again, music that they could bring in the headphones. It's like in Lost for the first season. There's the character of Hurley has his Discman, and he would very poignantly listen to music that would fit the mood for a montage at the end of the episode until I think episode 18, where his batteries finally died.
Oh, that's so great that they built that in.
Yeah, so they
that's
could use
wonderful.
it for about a season and then they couldn't use it again.
Wonderful.
Well, how could they after season 2? The batteries wouldn't last.
Sure.
Well, that reminded me a lot of the sound design in Baby Driver, where it's also, it's diegetic music because they're literally listening to headphones. And then how the quality of the sound changes because you're going from just natural ambiance into something that's very, very contained inside earbuds. Really good stuff.
Well, let's go back to science for a brief moment, because hey, who doesn't love bashing a crap film? But M. Night Shyamalan, so he's in that film like we've mentioned. He plays the role of a vet who is responsible for the death of
Mel Gibson's wife and the death of his faith.
Yes.
And yet he wasn't a drink driver, no. He fell asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, and apparently it was almost like it was meant to be. I mean, how depressing is that? That it was meant to be that she could die so that she could give some bogus piece of information about getting a bat off the wall and smacking it in the face of an alien. It's so dumb.
I love how, again, we've already mentioned this, but the look of realization on Mel Gibson's face is like, oh, and meanwhile the alien's just standing there holding Rory Culkin like, come on, man, come on.
Yeah, I'm having a little bit of trouble with my syringe of poison here that I'm trying to get in your son's nose.
Exposition. His lungs were closed. The poison wouldn't have gone in.
Well, I'm glad they told me, because I couldn't work it out.
No.
Honestly,
and
though,
I'm glad
I
he
was
was right.
Well,
I was thinking that. I was like, how did he survive that? That's ridiculous. But M. Night Shyamalan's character, it's just really fascinating how he constructs scenes that really don't make any sense. Like there's that part where he goes, I'm going to the lake because I don't really like water. I don't really know how my chances are. And you know, we're going to talk about this. By the way, don't go in the pantry. I walk around there, drive away. Like no conversation. Like, like this is like probably the most significant thing. Like any other alien film would like, we caught one.
Yeah.
No, he's caught it in there and he's driving off.
Yeah.
Oh,
And another sign, no pun at all, of his being a less than competent director is the fact that Mel Gibson clumsies about with a knife and cuts off the 2 forefingers of the alien, and then goes off and does something else for a bit more of the film. And then when they see the alien in the lounge holding the child, there's a shot of the hand with the 2 fingers cut off. Oh, but we then need to be reminded, hey, you remember when he saw that alien guy and he cut the fingers off? It's the same alien, guys.
It would be so elegant if they didn't do that, which is what A Quiet Place does. It shows, doesn't tell.
Exactly. And it lets you figure it out.
And also, I was also watching it going, oh my gosh, and now it's going to the flashback of the wife? Like just you were saying about the editing's terrible. It is terrible. It kills the whole pace.
We get it.
But it's like, it cuts back to that scene with her. It's like this emotional moment with his wife. Cut back to the alien in the lounge. And then
who's still trying to get his syringe to work.
And then,
hold on, I think it's jammed. Hang on.
And then Mel Gibson runs outside with the boy, and he's like on the lawn while Meryl's still inside. It's just weird.
Have you got this? I'm going to leave you with this guy and the bat.
Yeah, you got this.
And the glasses
and leave my
of
son
water.
there with you. My daughter. My little daughter's still in there, isn't she? Run away. Who cares about her? It's weird.
And the other lazy person in Signs is the camera person who always just put the camera down on the ground. Did you see how many shots there were from the ground? And went off, I don't know, to get a new plaid shirt from wardrobe. I don't know. Oh,
right.
Smoko! You know?
I mean, that's always kind of been, in terms of pacing and all that, that's always been like M. Night Shyamalan films' weaknesses, right? I mean, even in Sixth Sense, there's some really weird pacing in that movie.
I need to watch it again
So
because
do
I feel as though it's brilliantly done.
Yeah,
And
I've
that
watched it once.
The terrifying moments are terrifying and that it is well cut, but maybe it isn't.
It's amazing how much going back to watch something and knowing the larger oeuvre of a work from a director changes. It's like with Taika Waititi was a difference. It was different. Sorry, I went back and was just marvelled at how brilliant he was the whole way through. Whereas M. Night Shyamalan, it's like I go back and go, oh gosh, these issues were right there from the start.
Yeah.
Like we were so blinded by what he did bring some stuff. And I think back to kind of wrap up this conversation full circle, I do think Signs actually did more than we're giving it credit for, because at the time it was something really different and fresh.
Yeah, at the time.
And I wonder if you would have a film like A Quiet Place without Signs, in the sense that that sort of location and that kind of mood and things. I mean, Signs does create a certain mood, whether it's tense or not is to be debated, but there is this kind of sort of misty, hazy, kind of slightly off feeling about it. And I think it comes from the way that it's filmed. It's kind of very lazily put together, I think intentionally, and also not intentionally. But there's a certain kind of, misty, smoky...
A languidness, perhaps.
Everyone's they're all grieving, aren't they? It's all a grief. It's about that kind of stupid
Which is why
grief.
they're very muted, I suppose, in the way they speak and all. I will give M. Night credit for his casting and directing of young actors, because the young chap in
Haley Joel Osment
in Sixth Sense was clearly brilliant, and as we've said, Rory Culkin and Abigail Breslin,
and then Anna Taylor-Joy and Split.
Absolutely, they're all stunning.
And the kid from After Last Ember, man, he was so... No, he wasn't.
Have
you guys seen that movie?
Yeah, I started to, and I turned it off.
Sarah, and Jeremy, it feels like a betrayal is what that movie is. Especially if you love the TV series. That movie does everything wrong at every turn. And I've seen quite a few adaptations in my time. I haven't seen an adaptation as blatantly incompetent as The Last Airbender.
Wow. I think that one of the strongest things about The Sixth Sense, and he got lucky with his first major film, was Toni Collette, who I have always thought that her acting particularly in the car with the child,
Yes.
was the best acting I've ever seen in any film by anybody,
I need to
period.
watch it again because she's wonderful. She got
She is-
nominated for an Academy Award for that as
She's
well.
amazing. And the interesting thing is that I saw the trailer the other day for Hereditary, which looks utterly terrifying and much more suspenseful and of a Quiet Place ilk than a Signs ilk, thankfully. And Toni Collette is the lead, and she's the mama in that. And so I think that probably the film, which has been said to be utterly brilliant and petrifying and everything, will be incredibly strong. And I bet you a whole lot of that is down to her. So
nice.
good old M. Night for casting relatively little known Toni Collette back in those days, and she was certainly no Hollywood star, and I thought that was very astute of him. So he was onto a good thing then. So maybe he'll be onto a good thing again.
Well, thank you for listening to another episode of Cinema in Context. If you enjoyed our podcast, then please share it with your film-loving friends. You can always listen to Cinema in Context through SoundCloud or through Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on Facebook or subscribe to us on Twitter or YouTube, which are great places to let us know what you think of this episode or give us suggestions for future films to discuss or compare. Look out for our next episode in a month's time, and until then, ka kite anō.